part of my impetus and ours for coming here was sort of to engage some really smart and creative people and get them concerned about what we're concerned about. And then, you know, if anything ever came of that, we would be thrilled. And so part of that, just to get on the same page, everyone needs to see the same problem that we saw, the reason why we started Glassbooth, the results of our research, what happens when you dive into democracy in America and you look around. And I think, as you can imagine, some of the findings were pretty troubling, but we think each one of the findings was very actionable. And we do it one way. You know, we encourage everyone to do it any way they can. So just to dive into some of our findings, and this will be sort of the second part of our discussion where we really talk about the larger picture of what's going on here. Why does Glassbooth have to exist? We find in America there's a lot of identity politics. Stanley Fish wrote a good article in the New York Times actually yesterday. He defined identity politics as, in essence, identity politics is an affirmation of the tribe against the claims of ideology. And by ideology, I don't mean something bad, but any agenda informed by a vision of what the world should be like. So what he means is, and we do a lot of this in the US, we belong to different groups, different genders, different ethnicities, different religions, different political parties, ideologies, and then we go out and we root for our team no matter if we agree with them or not. And what happens is people actually end up contradicting sort of what they actually, in their core, believe because of who they are and who they see up there as the candidates. The problem is that it doesn't reflect what people are trying to express, and a democracy relies on this. There was an interesting research that we talk about done at UNC by someone named James Stinson, and he found that conservatives, Americans self-identify as conservative almost 2-to-1 over liberal now. And this is, in 1972 that number was about even, and since it's doubled. But at the same time, when asking people how they feel about the issues, there's actually no reason to think that people have become any more conservative anyway. What's actually happened is that being liberal has been less appealing, I guess, to self-identify. We sort of step in there by removing identity from the entire process and connecting you with what you care about in your core. Second, we find that information is empowering. This is sort of our thesis. We think that education is the foundation of any civic action. If you can educate someone on an issue and then highlight an opportunity for them to get involved, this is powerful. This is sort of our new thesis as we roll out. So when you start to talk to people who don't vote, and there was a League of Women's Voters study that, and also a study by the Carnegie Corporation of young people, and they asked non-voters, why aren't you voting? And non-voters are saying, we don't know enough about the candidates. We don't know enough about where they stand on issues. That's why we don't go and vote. So in Glassbooth, what we do is we educate you about the presidential election in this version, and then we lead you to register to vote, which is a small action. But the point is that education is what gets people up and gets them out to do different things civically. Third, the issues. We really think by asking you about the issues on the first page, we're bringing you in. I think to highlight that is something we like to talk about, that young people don't vote as much as other generations, older generations. They hardly vote. But they volunteer more than any other generation by far. And the generation now, the young generation now, volunteers more than almost any generation in history. So what it tells us is that we care, young people, and young people care. It's just that they care about the issues, and they don't identify through the political process. They don't see the candidates. They don't identify with the candidates. They don't see those people making the change they want to see. So they're drawn to it through what they care about, and we think that's powerful. Fourth, and for me, I think this is the most troubling, are voter misconceptions. These are people who go to vote. They go, I'm voting for candidate X because, you know, X, Y, and Z. In reality, that candidate believes the exact opposite. How widespread is this? A study, National Annenberg Election Survey, found that in 2004, just in the presidential election, there are two candidates. When asked to identify where either candidate stood on 8 of the biggest issues in that election, a little over half could typically identify where a candidate stood on the issue. Mind you, there's 2 candidates, so you have a 50% chance from the start. And I think that's troubling Because what does it feel like to have a misconception? A lot of people think they know where the candidates stand. We sort of have a rational ignorance theory. It's that you sort of think about a candidate, what they connote, and then you apply it across their agenda. And I can say during the research, there are candidates who think things, who stand a certain way on issues that you wouldn't have expected. There are surprises in there. So what we do at Glassbooth is we surface those surprises. When you do it, you get a surprising result. You have an expectation of who you might get, and you get someone else. And then we show you why. And I think that's the most interesting part of what we do. Because I get tons of emails from people who are like, I did your site, I really love Barack Obama, you gave me John McCain, so your site's wrong, thanks. And I'm like, you know, maybe not. Maybe you were misinformed about where your candidate stands. Maybe you're not in touch with their most recent agenda. So it's really it's a juncture of cognitive dissonance where people can go either way. They can sort of accept the shock or reject the process entirely. So that's sort of our case for democracy in America. And that's really where we stepped in. That's sort of what drives us. We think it's troubling. We think Glassbooth has something to offer. We think there's tons of creative ways to get involved outside of our process.